Hello, and thank you for joining us at OnTrack's monthly webinar series. Today we'll be talking about Maximo 7.5 End of Life. Where do we go from here? I imagine most of you listening today are still using IBM Maximo 7.5 or even earlier, and you've got questions regarding what not upgrading means for your organization. So during today's webinar, we'll be sharing some of the downsides and risks, as well as upgrade path options now that IBM has discontinued support for 7.5. I'm Kat Pullen, Marketing Coordinator for OnTrack's Consulting. OnTrack's is the only IBM Maximo Platinum business partner in North America. We handle Maximo from start to finish, software sales and renewals, assessments, implementation, support, consulting, and even training solutions. We are also, once again, the only IBM Maximo reseller in North America. Our team knows Maximo and stands ready to improve your processes. Okay, I'm done with the commercial, guys. Many of you already know our featured presenter today, Jeff Yazinski, who is one of our principal consultants here at OnTrack. Jeff is an IBM certified Maximo Advanced Deployment Professional with over 10 years of experience and has worked with a long and reputable list of customers across North America. Jeff, thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
All right. Thanks, Kat. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining here today. Welcome to the presentation here. We'll be spending probably about the next hour together here going through a few things in regards to the end of life for Maximo 7.5, and then ultimately what does that mean for your organization. So what's your next step? What do you need to look at? A variety of different things. So we'll talk through all that. So our agenda here for the next hour, we're going to talk about the 7.5 end of support. So what really does that mean for you guys? The downsides, risks, myths of not upgrading. So we'll talk about a few points about that. And then we'll get into Maximo 7.6. Okay? So we'll talk about the overview, the paths, options, some of the new add-on solutions, features, work centers. So there's a variety of things that we're going to go through and talk about for your next steps with Maximo 7.5 or an earlier version potentially. At the end of the session, like Kat mentioned, there's going to be a little bit of a QA, so feel free if you can hold off. We can answer any of your questions at the end of this presentation. Certainly willing to answer any of those or at least have a discussion about those. There's a few things in here, for example, the IBM roadmap. I just want to put that little statement at the bottom that, really any statements regarding IBM's plans, directions, their intent, they're ultimately subject to IBM's withdrawal or changes, certainly at their discretion. We are an IBM business partner, so we do, we work very closely with IBM on the direction of Maximo, in terms of a little bit of a steering committee. We work with them. So we do understand their path and the direction that they're taking with Maximo, so we're able to kind of present on that. So without further ado, I'll move forward here and we'll kind of get into exactly what the presentation is all about. But we'll kick things off with a little bit of a poll. The poll is going to let you, submit what version you're on. So really just out of curiosity with the group here, what exactly version is your organization on? You've got a variety of different answers here. So 761 is, of course, a choice. 760.x, so 7606, for example. 7607, another example. 75, 71. 6.2 or older, or potentially you're not sure, about what version you're on. Okay, so we'll just give it, another minute or two here, if that, probably 10 more seconds. It looks like from the answers, I'm going to move forward here in about 10 seconds, that the bulk of everybody here who's participated in the poll here is on Maximo 7.5, which is likely to be expected for this presentation. So I'll skip to the results here. And you'll see the great majority of everybody here is on 7.5. Looks like a few folks or one of the the respondents is on 7.1, so a little bit older of a version. And then a few folks are on the current version, but it looks like they're just trying to get some more information about Maximo, maybe as part of a future upgrade potentially, especially if you're on 7.6.0, moving to the 7.6.1 version. So that's great. Thanks for everyone for participating in that poll. Kind of gives an idea of, what everyone is here for, right? Okay, so let's talk about the end of support announcement. So what exactly is this? So end of support ended April 30th, 2018 for all Maximo 7.5X products. Okay, so this includes any industry solutions, so oil and gas, calibration, HSE, any of the add-ons or industry solutions for Maximo. So anything that has a 7.5 versioning is basically in end of support mode right now. Okay, what that means for our end customers, or yourself I should say, is really that IBM no longer provides fixes, patches, telephone support for Maximo 7.5. So if you were to submit a PMR for Maximo 7.5, ultimately because it's out of support or at its end of support stage, no fixes will be developed for that product. So what they would likely recommend is for you to move to 7.6. IBM extended support is available, but of course that is costs. It likely will cost a premium. So you can provide, or I guess get IBM extended support, but you're going to have to pay for that, of course. Okay, in addition to your licensing. So I guess one of the big things is if you're on 7.5 or older version 7.1, even with 7.6, right? So 7.6.0 release, you want to start planning this process. So you want to look at what exactly is involved with an upgrade, and we'll talk through a lot of that here today. Okay, just in addition to the end of support, there was also a few end of life announcements. So what this means is that there's a bunch of products that were offered by IBM that do not have an equivalent Maximo 7, or sorry, a 7.6 equivalent replacement part. So this is something that needs to be discussed with IBM. We can certainly facilitate that discussion. But if you're using any of the products in the table below, ultimately there is no 7.6 equivalent replacement. So, for example, the mobile suite, so the Work Manager, mobile suite, the Asset Manager, Inventory Manager, ultimately those licenses do migrate and convert over to Maximo Anywhere. There's the Project Adapter, the Primavera Adapter. Those do trade up potentially to Scheduler, so those are, of course, discussions that you do need to have with IBM. So there's a bunch of other ones that don't have an equivalent 7.6 replacement part. So if you do have, for example, the Primavera Adapter in 7.5 or even 7.1, that's part of your planning process. You need to know what exactly are you doing with it, what are you going to do with, how are you going to use that or replace that functionality within Maximo potentially. Or are you going to build your own potentially for Primavera? So let's kind of talk about a little bit more about the IBM software lifecycle. So this is kind of an interesting little table that I've put together here. So which outlines kind of what their general availability for version is, and then when the end of support. Okay, I guess the reason why I like putting this is kind of gives you a visual. Kind of shows you what the length of the support period for each of our versions are. So for 7.1, the general availability or the release date of 7.1 was June of 2008. End of support officially ended on April of 2015. So approximately 7 years, I guess. So the same goes with 7.5. So it was about a 7-year window, I suppose, give or take 6 months. So June 2011 to April 2018. And then, of course, 7.6X and 7.6.1 are currently supported versions. IBM has not announced the end of support for those two products yet. So 7.6X, so 7.6.0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Those are the general availability for 7.6.0 was December of 2014, and then the general availability for 7.6.1 was released July of 2018. So it kind of gives you an idea. Of course, nothing is official, but it kind of gives you an idea of what the previous release cycles were from a software lifecycle perspective. Okay. So we'll talk through some of the downside risks, some of the myths, I guess, for not upgrading. So, one of the big ones is platform support. So as we've increased the Maximo version, so we've gone from 6.2 to 6.7.6.1, of course, new versions of the middleware components within Maximo have been, newer versions come out. For example, WebSphere has gone through a number of versions since 6.2 all the way from WebSphere 6.0 to 9.0. And as newer versions get released, we do get access to the newer versions. So as you can see, 7.6.1 is supported on 8.5.5 and 9.0. As we get newer products, as WebSphere gets more recent versions, any issues, bugs, defects are all fixed. Potential security elements or security threats within the WebSphere application server do get corrected as well. So if you do have a Maximo environment that's exposed to the internet, a lot of those scripting issues, potential cross-scripting issues do get fixed as part of that. Same goes with WebLogic. So newer versions, as Maximo goes through its stages, any newer release does get access or is supported on newer versions within WebLogic. And then also JDK. So the server-side JDK has gone from 1.5 all the way to 1.8. As you can see here, the supported version on Maximo 7.6.1 is 1.8. On 7.6.x, you could either run it in 1.7 or 1.8, depending on your release level. So you see it's newer versions. Once again, the platform support itself, you get newer versions when you do upgrade Maximo itself. Okay. Same goes with the database server. There's quite a few databases that Maximo is supported on, of course, but if you want to leverage, for example, some of the newer versions of SQL Server, so if you want to go to 2016 Server, for example, you do have to be on the 7.6 level. For Oracle 12c does have a wide variety or wide range of supported operating systems for Maximo, so even 7.1, or I guess 7.1 was supported on Oracle 12c, so 7.5, 7.6, 7.6.1, they were also all supported. Okay. And then last but not least, I've only put Windows Server on this kind of the operating system for the administrative server itself. Maximo, of course, can be installed, some of the newer versions at least, can be installed on Linux variants, Unix, etc., AIX. But what I've just left this table to be is Windows Server. So you'll see that Maximo 7.6 and 7.6.1 can run the newer, latest Windows servers itself. So for example, 2016, you do have to be on a 7.6 level to be able to leverage the 2016 Windows Server. So a variety of other platform support that you do get access to, I guess, that you do get supportability for as you upgrade Maximo. So browsers, so depending on what your organization uses for a browser, IBM does certify the newer browsers, so you do have to upgrade to leverage, for example, Internet Explorer 11. So JRE, so the Java Runtime Environment, this is a key one because things like direct print, for example, on the older versions of Maximo, direct print was a fairly major issue because of the JRE or the Java, I guess, dependency to that. With some of the newer versions, or I guess I should say it's in 7.6, the JRE dependency has been removed. So it makes things a little bit easier from a workspace or workstation perspective. We continually to see the update Java prompts in the window that says update Java, and quite often what we see is when Java gets updated on each person's workstation with older versions of Maximo, it's possible that direct print functionality is broken. Things like the Maximo Workflow Designer as well, that one used to be JRE or Java dependency, so it was an applet in Maximo. That's no longer the case. That's been removed. So it is some of the newer technologies that are available. LDAP server, so some of the newer LDAP server, or I should say Active Directory server for Windows, you do get some of the newer AD from a support perspective. And then reporting. So reporting does get upgraded. There's a newer version typically with each release. Things have been fixed, bug features, for a variety of different things have been made better. All right, so staying current. So let's talk through the different versions, I guess. So I've already mentioned, so Maximo 7.5. So IBM does not provide feature packs or fix packs for 7.5 anymore. So the most recent version, and this is basically going to be static because they're not releasing anything else, is 7.5.0.11. So Fix Pack 11, this was released October 28th of 2016. So of course this was quite some time ago. There was an iFix released for 7.5.0.11, which was April 26th of 2018. So those are the last two really releases that we'll ever see for Maximo 7.5. So that's the newest version, and that's going to be the version that it is. Okay. For Maximo 7.6, I guess I'm going to talk about the differentiation between the 7.6.0 and the 7.6.1 streams. Okay. So the 7.6.0 streams will be receiving fix packs. Okay, so fix packs essentially are bug defects, fixes, things that aren't working that they're going to fix. So that will still be provided by IBM for the 7.6.0 release. The latest version for that is 7.6.0.10, and the Fix Pack 10 was released just recently, actually, so January 31st of 2019. And then when it comes to Maximo 7.6.1, this is one of the big differences. So, of course, IBM is doing fix packs, or I guess fixes, as part of the releases. But the 7.6.1 stream get the new features. So the 7.6.1 fix packs are technically feature packs. So a feature pack is really new features plus fixes. So 7.6.1 will get feature packs. 7.6.0 will get fix packs, and then 7.5 no longer gets any of those. Okay, any of the new industry solutions and add-ons will require the 7.6.1 stream. That's what we've been told. So on a future slide here, we'll kind of see the 2019 roadmap. In order to get the new, for example, oil and gas industry solution, whatever version that's going to be, I suppose, Maximo will have to be on 7.6.1. Okay, so it's the latest version of 7.6. Sorry, this should say 7.6.1, but the latest version of 7.6.1 is iFix 6. And that was released actually last week. So there's a brand new release for that, February 15th of this year. So here's the roadmap for 2019. So this comes straight from IBM. I've actually taken this image from one of their roadmap presentations. So the one thing I guess I'll kind of make note of is we'll look at the top stream here. You'll see that it appears that there's going to be a couple feature packs that are released this year. So second quarter of 2019, I believe this is going to be a feature pack with a variety of different features that are included as part of that. So potentially some updates to Workcenters. Every place is getting replaced with the new skin itself, and we'll talk about the new skin very shortly. Some updates to job plans, platform updates. Every new feature pack will include, generally speaking, new platform updates. So if there's a new middleware component, potentially a database that IBM certifies on, we're going to be able to see that, and it's going to be released. And we'll get notification that this is a new certified platform. And then fourth quarter of 2019, it looks like another feature pack will be released. Very similar, so Workcenter updates, a variety of different versioning and platform changes. So that's what's going to be accessible to us. Okay, of course the roadmap does include their mobility stream, industry solution and add-ons. For those that are working with oil and gas HSE, right now IBM's tentative plan is to release a brand new version in the fourth quarter of this year. So that's one thing I would just want to highlight. There's a variety of other industry solutions on their roadmap for this year though. All right. So license evaluation and optimization. This is another big thing that, generally I try to recommend. When you go through an upgrade, typically you're going to take a look at your security groups. You're going to look at the people that are accessing Maximo. You know, it's an opportunity to maybe do a license evaluation. So licensing has changed over the years. So things have changed. The limited use license has changed. They've introduced new licensing. So usually what I would recommend is, hey, as part of this upgrade, you know, changing off of 7.5, let's reevaluate where we're at with licensing. Because this could potentially cost money, right? Like Maximo costs you every year from a SNS perspective. So really what you could potentially do is do a license review as part of an upgrade. License structure has changed. So license options have changed. So for example, express licenses were introduced at some point. Limited use licenses are now 3 modules per person, not company. So that's one of the big changes that have happened, you know, over the past 4 or 5 years. Maximo Every Place was bundled and included Maximo 7.6. So Every Place is the connected mobile solution that IBM provides. There's no offline capability. Essentially what this does is reskins it to be able to have a more friendly look and feel for a mobile device. And then IBM concurrent licensing has also been introduced. So we have seen a few of our customers move to the concurrent licensing model for a variety of reasons. So, you know, it's simpler, right? Because it's really, you know, how many people are concurrently logged in. Very simple. You don't have to worry about whether they have, you know, 3 acts, 3 modules, or whatever that looks like. So it makes things a little bit easier potentially, depending on your use case. This is just a little bit more information about the Maximo Every Place. So like I said, it's included as part of the 7.6 release, and it allows mobile access through a browser on connected only devices. All right, let's just kind of pause for a few minutes here. Let's just kind of do another poll here just to kind of wake everybody up. So let's just kind of do a poll here. When is your organization currently planning to upgrade to Maximo? So are you currently upgrading 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, or basically it's not sure, you've got no plans to upgrade right now, and that's fair. So just give a couple minutes here or seconds just to kind of get everyone's answers in. Okay, I'm going to skip forward here. Okay, so it's kind of split a little bit in between. You know, some are currently upgrading. You know, some are planning in the next 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year, and then right now there's no plans to upgrade. Looks like that's kind of split between the currently upgrading and the unknown. So that's great. Okay, so let's talk about planning for Maximo 7.6.1. So this could potentially be planning for any upgrade within Maximo. So this is it's kind of a generic thing. The IBM upgrade tools have been have been fairly similar over the years. So even if you were to do a 6.2 to 7.1 upgrade, this is fairly similar. So what exactly is supported with this process? So all data, of course. You know, the expectation is you upgrade Maximo, we're not losing data, right? So we should not be losing any data. It should be what you had before is what you're going to have in the newer version. So that's really the expectation. Any configurations that you perform within the configuration tools. So things like if you go into system configuration, platform configuration, which is a module in Maximo, a lot of the administrative tools are found in there. So things like database configuration, domains, escalations, things like that, cron tasks. So anytime that you perform a configuration in these configuration tools, this is another expectation, and the upgrade tools do support that. So those upgrades those configurations will be upgraded to the newer version. The data model. So database configuration, I did mention that. So you know, any attributes that were added, potentially any user-defined objects as well. So if you've got a custom object in there, that object itself, or that table I should say, in the database will be upgraded because Maximo does know about it because you've created that in the database configuration. User interface and presentation layer. So Maximo stores any of its applications in XML files stored in the database. So as part of the upgrade, because they're in the database, very similar, it's technically data, it's configuration data, but what happens is you upgrade Maximo, it's going to take that current XML and move it up into the new version. Workflow processes, so those do get upgraded as well. Data validations, default values, integration definitions. So all of this is supported in the upgrade. So what the configuration that you had in 7.5 will be upgraded to 7.6. Now, from my experience, your configuration in 7.5 doesn't always work in 7.6, but at least the configuration is there. Okay, so that's just one thing. And of course, that goes back to, you do have to do a lot of testing as part of the project. Okay. Things that are not supported or done automatically as part of the upgrade process. So custom extensions of code. So anytime that you've written or you do have Java code that in your Maximo environment, so maybe you've extended potentially a bean class or even just an MBO, for example, none of that does get upgraded. So there's a variety of different things that you do have to do to get through that to ensure that it's working in 7.6.1 or 7.6 as a matter of fact. Any changes to the database schema or database objects that were not made with the database configuration. So if you've gone into the database itself and created a couple tables, maybe a view, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to get upgraded. Okay? It's possible, and I've seen this, where the update tools and the upgrade tools actually drop those tables. So you do have to be careful about that. There is something called the integrity checker, and there is a repair mode, and I've seen, if it's conflicting or there's something that's not right, it could potentially remove that from the database. And then any changes to source files. So if you've installed Maximo, for example, in IBM and the SMP folder, any changes to that do not move through, because when you upgrade to 7.6.1, for example, even if you're on 7.6x, you do have to reinstall Maximo. So there's a variety of tools that I usually recommend that can actually show the server differences in files. And then what you can do is essentially build out a list of files that you do have to either copy into the new 7.6.1 folder potentially, or make a change to it, so that you do have to action those items. Okay. So a little bit more planning. So lot of information on this screen. So this kind of puts everything together as part of your upgrade project. Okay. So this is going to determine exactly what technical activities happen potentially, what testing happens, what is your change management processes. So really understanding your current version and upgrade path is very key. Okay, so there is usually a multi-step process to go from your current version to, for example, 7.6.1. It's multiple steps. If you're on 7.1, for example, you have to go 7.1 to 7.5, and then at the 7.5 level, you have to apply an iFix to that level, and then go from that 7.5 level to 7.6, and then from 7.6 to 7.6.1. So it's multiple steps that have to happen. Java customizations, so kind of talked about this. What exactly are you going to do with these Java customizations? So quite often what I would recommend is you convert those to the automation scripts. So in Maximo there's automation script functionality. This kind of mimics Java functionality. So you can actually do Python code with a little bit of Java in it as well. Really it's Jython. So you can call Java logic within the Python script itself. Number of users is a big one. I've got a separate slide on that. Really this comes down to, what does your new system architecture look like? I always like using an upgrade to fix things. So if you're having performance problems, we try to address that. If it's too complicated from an administrative perspective, maybe let's simplify that, right? So it's always a good time as part of an upgrade to address some of the issues that you do see with the system architecture itself. Size and database complexity. So this has a big impact too. So time to complete the upgrade scripts. I've seen a wide variety of time itself. So I've seen some upgrade scripts run for 60 hours. I've seen some run for 10 minutes. So there's a big difference. So you really have to approach this differently depending on the size of the database. The difference between 50 million work orders and 10,000 work orders is fairly substantial when it comes to an upgrade. In the industry solution and add-ons, of course, that has a direct impact on testing, and then it also has a direct impact on the upgrade path because you do have to upgrade your industry solutions. Configuration complexity, this is another big one. So workflow, for example. How much testing do we need to do as part of your workflow? So do you have all the use cases defined? We want to make sure that the Maximo does, route the record appropriately as part of the workflow. And there's no errors, of course. Integrations, here's another big one. So are you integrated to an ERP system, a HR system? So the definitions for the integrations do get upgraded, but they may not necessarily work. So what I've seen in the past is, as part of upgrading Maximo, for example, if I'm sending work orders to another system, what potentially could happen is a whole bunch of extra fields as part of that work order get added to the integration definition. Now the other system needs to know about these, or potentially you need to remove them. So training requirements, so end user training, what does that look like? So we'll talk about what, there's quite a few changes, of course, so let's talk about those. From a UI perspective, there's substantial changes there, especially if you're going from an older, like for example, 7.1 to 7.6.1. The UI has changed fairly substantial. Okay, and then lastly, new functionality or enhancement. So do we want to roll out maybe a change in workflow? Or is this going to be a like-for-like upgrade? So you really want to make that decision because this could impact, testing, your development time could change significantly if you're making program improvements or process improvements as part of your upgrade. Okay, so just a quick, server architecture design. So I talked about this a little bit. What does your server architecture look like? So, at a bare minimum, I usually recommend 3 environments anyway. At a bare minimum, you definitely need 2 environments. So for example, a very, very small upgrade, you've got 2 environments, a development and a production. This does have some limitations to it, but this is kind of a very high-level example of potentially how many Maximo environments you do need. So a very common one is the medium size where you've got development, test, and production. But if you're doing a significant amount more development, you've got integrations that you have to separately test, it's very common that also that the large, architecture structure does exist within your organization. So all of these do need to be installations. So you have to account for that. So Maximo does have to get installed on all these machines. Your middleware components, so the application server does need to be accounted for on all these. Okay, so a little bit more planning. So you got to make sure current industry solutions and add-ons are compatible with 7.6.1, 7.6.0, or any version that you're moving towards. So we've got a couple links in the presentation here. So there's the coexistence matrix and then the platform matrix. And these 2 Excel spreadsheets really define what currently is compatible with each other. So from a server perspective, from an industry solution perspective. So for example, 7.6.1, what version of scheduler is compatible with it? Or what version of utilities is compatible with it? Because you really want to make sure that they are compatible versions that you're working with. So in 7.6.1, just to kind of reiterate, so there's 3 components: the administration workstation, so Windows 2012 R2, Windows 2016. There's some Unix, AIX, Red Hat, Ubuntu flavors there as well, of course. Application server support, so WebSphere 8.5.5.13 or WebSphere 9.0.0.7, and then of course WebLogic 12.2.1.1, so 12. And one of the big changes will be the JDK. So if you're going to 7.6.1, 1.7 JDK on the server is not supported, so you have to run 1.8. Okay, so because Maximo 7.6.1 is supported on WebSphere 8.5.5.1.3, it's possible that you are running 7.6.0 on WebSphere 8.5.5. Okay, but the difference is WebSphere 855 with Maximo 760 is likely 1.7. So there will be something that needs to be addressed on the WebSphere, even if you're not reinstalling it. You do have to change JDK components. Okay, so moving to 761, like I said, it's a process. You do have to step through the corresponding levels, and then each corresponding level does need to be run with update DB. Okay, so from 7.5, you got to go to 760X, and then ultimately move to 761. Okay, I mentioned this earlier as well. You do have to address the industry solutions as well. Okay, one thing that has changed for 761 is if you previously have 760 installed, or 7.5 potentially, you do need to reinstall it. So you do have to have it in its own folder. So any of the Java class files, the binaries, all the installation media, or I guess installation part, does need to go into a separate folder. So it is a reinstall, and that's why I always recommend if for example, this folder, this SMP folder on the D drive, so D IBM SMP, is actually a 760 install, and you install 761 into SMP 761, you do want to do a difference on those two directories to see exactly what needs to be changed in the new folder to ensure that you've captured all the changes that you've done in 760. WebSphere has a path as well. So the path for upgrading that will kind of take two different directions depending on where you want to go. I generally recommend always upgrading to the newest WebSphere application server. So generally speaking, you probably want to have new servers. So for example, Windows 2016, you install WebSphere 9007. And then what you could do is configure similar to a new install, or use the WebSphere migration tools to potentially recreate those profiles in 9.007. Okay, so from a Maximo 761 perspective, there's a variety of new components as part of this. Okay, so the installation we've talked about quite extensively, I guess. The middleware components, we've talked a little bit about how WebSphere, the new version of WebLogic, what we need to do in order to do that. IBM's also introduced a new version or I guess a new WebSphere version that's supported with Maximo 761, so the WebSphere Liberty application server. So it's a little bit different of a version. It's not the WebSphere network deployment version itself. One of the big new features of 761 is the user interface skin. So they do use the IoT 18 skin now, and we'll talk more about that very shortly. It's got a different look and feel. It's more modernized, and we'll see that here very shortly. From an analytics perspective, so Cognos, we won't get into too much detail about Cognos, so there's a new version that Maximo supported on. There's lots of really good videos that IBM has put out on Cognos itself and the Maximo integration to that. So lots of good information. If you need to find those videos, certainly feel free to reach out to me. I think there's about 12 videos on that. Workcenters, so we'll talk more about that, but service requests, inspections. There's a new Maximo Management Interface Workcenter, which is really cool kind of from an administrative perspective, so you can actually see different things that are happening on the JVM. And then lastly, admin mode. So when this is actually from a technical perspective and someone who does configurations, this one's actually really nice. It actually tells you as soon as you log into Maximo whether you're in admin mode or not. So it's actually it's good for your developers to be able to see that very easily. If you've ever made a configuration change in Maximo and had to go into admin mode, likely you've probably forgotten it in admin mode. So a lot of things don't happen in admin mode, so you realize that after the fact. Okay, so user interface changes. So it's a IBM's really tried to modernize the user experience. So this was introduced in 760, but of course it still exists in 761. But the collapsible navigation menu. So you'll notice on the screenshot here, or screenshots, I should say. The left one is 760, the one on the right, and on the top is 761. So you'll see the little left-hand navigation bar. You can minimize that. So any of your kind of your actions, so from a, for example, change status of a work order, approve it, complete it, same thing with a purchase order, any of those actions would be in that itself. Okay, label positioning is another one. Okay, that's changed. So label positioning, so if you go into a record, let me see if we've got it here. Yeah, you'll see that the labels are now horizontal. Okay, so before the label used to be above the field. In Maximo 761, or 760 I should say, it's now been moved to be on the left-hand side. So it does try to increase, free up a little bit of room on the screen itself. New icons have been introduced. So you'll see I've kind of highlighted some of the new icons on the top on the left-hand image itself. So they'll take a little bit of getting used to. This has an impact on your training manuals, for example. So training, just from a general user change management perspective, users will have to get used to this. The confirmation message is much more clear. So you'll see in the right-hand image there, when you save a record, it's very clear that it's been saved. It kind of highlights it. So it's a little bit different than kind of shows it a little bit more in the background on the older versions. So there's dynamic label position as well. So if this is enabled, you can actually, depending on the size of your screen, sometimes the labels go on the top, sometimes they go horizontal, sometimes they go vertical. So that's really the goal of this, is to try and prevent scrolling on the bottom of the screen. So really that's one of the big things, is just from a general data entry perspective, it's kind of easier to scroll up and down than scroll left to right. So that's really the goal of what we've tried to do with this. So some additional technical updates that we've talked about. So JDK 1.8, Webster Liberty. So what I've got on the screen here is the Maximo Management Interface Workcenter. So this is a Workcenter, and we'll kind of introduce Workcenters here in about a minute. This allows us to just get more information about the Maximo server itself. So you can actually see how many users are logged in, some of the database information, long-running queries, potentially if there's any locked threads. So it gives you a variety of different information about the Maximo JVM itself. Here's the admin mode. So when admin mode, when admin mode is turned on, a variety of different things in Maximo do not occur. So this is when you're changing things in the database configuration, potentially making a structural change. So you can actually refresh the list now to see which cron tasks have yet to be shut down. You also get a little notification, or I guess it's a text box in yellow that shows that admin mode is on. So this is kind of a nice way you log into Maximo and you know immediately whether admin mode is on or if someone's forgotten to turn it off from last Friday. So that's really nice. I think this is really good from a developer's perspective. Okay. Workcenters. So this is new functionality that was introduced in 7605. They're role-based applications. Really what it is, it's a set of applications that are separate actually to Maximo. They all connect to the same database. They use the same data, but it's really developed on more of a modern HTML5 technology. So they're based on Google Polymer. They are included in Maximo, so no additional licensing is required. And really, you'll see that every feature package that's been released, and as part of the roadmap that we showed, you'll see that there's a lot of investment into these. So every feature pack has slightly different changes, more information, more features on these Workcenters. Okay, so we'll kind of talk through fairly quick here with all the Workcenters. So there's the Work Technician Workcenter. So this Workcenter works on assignments and reports actuals. So if they've been assigned a work order, for example, that they have to go out, complete the work, they have the ability to do that within this Workcenter. So you can create follow-up work based on your current work environment. And then report anything that you also need to do, when you're completing out that work. So failure reporting, downtime, meter readings. You can actually view any of the asset and location information for that work order itself. So this is the Work Technician Workcenter that's included as part of Core Maximo. There's also a Work Supervisor Workcenter. So this Workcenter is kind of, the role itself is to supervise and understand your team's work and assignments. So you can approve, assign, close out work orders, really as the priority shift throughout the day. So potentially you've got an emergency work order that comes in, you need to assign it to somebody, you can assign it right within the Workcenter itself. So there's a variety of tasks that are available to this one. Of course, approving work orders, assigning, closing. You can actually monitor active work orders for the day. Service requests. This is another Workcenter. So allows you to submit problems quickly and efficiently through that Workcenter itself. So creating service requests, you can classify, identify the location. You provide any information that's really available to you as part of just the regular create service request process. So it allows you to submit it right there within the Workcenter. And then, of course, you can view your requests as well. Inspections. So this is one of the newer Workcenters itself. So it allows you to create and manage these forms with a variety of information on them to manage, basically for your inspectors to complete. So whether it's a compliance inspection or just a general inspection to go out to see if things are functioning correctly, you can certainly set these up to be able to do that. There's a variety of different things that you can define on them. Ultimately, it's really just questions and what are the response types to that. So you could include meter readings, have an attachment on it, a list of options, free text. It's relatively flexible right now. The forms are revision controlled, so you do have the ability to see who's revised it, be able to keep the track of the changes to this form. And then these forms are really set up on job plans. So you put the form, this inspection form, on a job plan. That job plan could potentially be set up on a preventative maintenance record and then set up to be a reoccurring inspection. And then lastly, you do have the ability to do an unscheduled inspection. Okay, so here's a couple images. On the left, we've got kind of a fire system inspection, and on the right, an example of a vehicle inspection report. So a variety of different questions. This is kind of how it would look on your tablet, for example. So it kind of gives you kind of a better look and feel, different look and feel, I should say, a little bit more modernized for those inspections. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. So there's the MMI, or the Maximo Management Interface. So it gives you a variety of information, so database information, MBO count, memory, JVM info, threads, OS info, a lot of different stuff from a technical administration perspective. So this is a separate Workcenter in itself. Okay, and then for Maximo 761, there's two new applications that were introduced. So I'll give a kind of a high-level brief overview of those. So there's the License Usage Monitor. And so what this does is this allows you to understand the actual usage of Maximo. So we found that it's, understanding what you actually use in Maximo can be difficult. So this was introduced to hopefully solve that. You can register the license that you own and then optionally assign specific users. You can run reports in Maximo. I think there's 2 or 3 reports that come with this application out of the box that allows you to run those and actually view the data that's presented to you. So those are BERT reports. And then another one is budget tracking. So this is the second application that was introduced. So this allows you to really specify a budget on a financial period, a date range, a fiscal year, a quarter. It allows you to basically set budgets. Budget administrators can create budget lines really around anything. So if you have a GL component that you want to actually monitor what the usage for that GL itself is, or a project. So if you're using the cost management application, maybe you want to be able to create this access point around the cost management record itself or the project ID. You could certainly do that. And then what it allows you to do is it really just allows you to identify the transactions that could potentially be impacted from an estimation, the committed, or an actual budgeted cost perspective. Okay. All right, and here's my last slide. And before we kind of move into the QA session, I guess just to kind of summarize, a few keys to success for upgrading Maximo. I think a lot of these are really generalized as well, so these aren't specific to 761, but really analyze and determine your business requirements. So what exactly is the high-level goal of the upgrade? So are you doing like for like? Are you doing process improvement? What's the scope ultimately? I think that's really what it is. So if it's a technical like for like, really the processes should not change, and it's really just going to be a technology upgrade. So you're going to get the new version, or are we going to implement new functionality? Plan and understand the upgrade path and approach. I think this one's fairly key from a technical perspective, so you know exactly what is the step-by-step. Like I mentioned before, if you're on an older version, there's a few additional steps that need to take place. So if you're on 7.1, it's a multi-step process. 7.5, there's a few less steps, I suppose. And then if you're on 7.6.0, potentially it's just a one-step process. Perform a trial upgrade. So this really allows you to take your one environment, run through the IBM upgrade tools itself, and actually see what the result is. Because what we find is you could either crash and burn, I guess, and really have to fix a lot of things, which may change the bigger picture of the upgrade project, or it could be fairly seamless. So things could work very well, you don't run into a lot of issues, and then that may change your overall project approach. Significant amount of testing. This one's key. So testing is very important. It is. We're using the upgrade tools itself, but it doesn't mean that the configurations will work. They may be there, but they may not work. So we always want to make sure we perform a significant amount of testing. Perform multiple upgrade runs. So this allows you to perfect the process. So you do the upgrade run in dev, you perform some fixes, you make some changes, you run through testing, then you have to remediate, then maybe do another upgrade run and test. You do the exact same thing. Maybe you run through kind of a mini user acceptance testing session. Maybe there's some deficiencies, and then you have to do another upgrade run. So do multiple upgrade runs. It's going to allow you to perfect it. From a developer perspective, it's going to give you a little bit more confidence when you pull, when you have to turn off production at 5 p.m. on Friday, and it needs to be up, Sunday afternoon, for example. What's your training and change management strategy? So what exactly are you training on? If it's a like-for-like approach, maybe you're just updating screens. So basically it's the exact same process, but it looks different. So maybe your quick reference guides just need updates. So that's consideration. And then lastly is the production deployment plan or playbook. Really fully understand what's involved with the production go live, who's involved, what are the roles, what's the communication, what does everyone work on, right? So making sure that the communication is all laid out in advance. So those are really just kind of some high-level keys to success from an upgrade perspective. And that really concludes it. We're 5 minutes to go, so.
Yeah, we don't have much time, but there has been a lot of questions about the work centers.
Oh, great.
Are the work centers configurable, and how is that done?
Great. No, that's a good question. That's fantastic. So right now, as it stands, the work centers are not configurable, okay? But on the IBM roadmap, we've been told that this is in their plans to be able to configure those. So I don't know what it's going to currently look like or what it's going to look like in the future, but ultimately I hope it's something like App Designer where you can actually move fields around, add a new field. That's IBM's ultimate goal, but as it stands right now, we don't have that tool available to us.
Okay. There was another question. They heard that the failure reporting in Workcenter launches Maximo Classic window. Is that true?
like when you report problem, cause, remedy, I'm assuming. I've ran through that scenario exactly on 761, and I do, in my environment, I do have the most recent iFix on it, and the Workcenter functions as it would expect. So you can report, if the asset's got a failure class on it, you have the work order, you report the problem, cause, remedy, and it's directly within the Workcenter. So from my understanding, it works as intended. I'd be curious to know which version you tried it on, because the technician Workcenter has been around for a while, and they've, IBM's made great improvements on it. So feel free to email me, whoever asked that question, and we could even walk through it if you wanted to.
Okay. Let's see. We have a couple more on the Workcenters. Are the Workcenters available offline?
So that's another one. It's on the roadmap. So I was at a conference about 3-4 weeks ago, and that is definitely on the roadmap, and that is the goal, to make the Workcenters to be able to go offline. They would pull the data into the browser cache itself, or the browser database, or the SQLite database, I believe it is. So I guess right now they're not. They are only online connected modes. So, but the plan is to make those offline eventually.
Okay. Is the service request Workcenter considered self-service?
Service request Workcenter considered self-service? Yes, it is, Scott. I believe it is. I can definitely clarify that, though, Scott, if you don't mind. I know we've chatted before, but yep, you are right. So essentially, if it's a self-serve license, essentially it's free. So I'm mostly positive about that is true. So if your organization has entitlements to Maximo, so if you've got authorized, limited, and express, or whatever mix that you do have, you also have unlimited self-serve licenses, which are included, which service request is included in. So yes.
Okay, we've got just 2 minutes left, and 2 questions. Are there IBM Maximo upgrade tools available online?
So the upgrade tools are actually included with the product itself. So, for example, if you're on 7.5, the 7.1 upgrade tools technically are included within that 7.5 product. When you install 7.6 or 7.6.0, the 7.5 upgrade tools are included within that product. So I guess available online, they're available from IBM, I suppose. They're not a separate upgrade tool itself. So it's part of the installation. So you technically, when you're upgrading Maximo, you install the newer version, and then you use the tools within that version to upgrade from the previous version.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. We really appreciate everyone attending today's webinar. We're just at the top of the hour. This will be the end. We will make this recording available for folks that were not able to attend, and we'll be sending a link in the coming days. And for those of you that we weren't able to get to your questions, we will send you an email and answer those as well. Thank you for your patience. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.